Ever wonder what would happen if the most insane, most Scottish, almost richest duck in the world lost his grip on his own rebelling shadow and furiously plunged into the icy depths of Duckburg Bay? Want to find out? Okay then, this is the Ballad of Duke Baloney. For those of us that grew up watching the original 1987 DuckTales, there was no villain more evil, mean-spirited, and just diabolical than Flintheart Glomgold. He was like a dark mirror for Scrooge McDuck, a vision of what Duckburg's richest uncle might be like if he had no heart, honor, or compassion. Those traits may not seem like a lot, but their absence in Flintheart Glomgold makes all the difference. Uncle Scrooge may be stingy and greedy, but there was always a limit to how far he would go to be the richest duck in the world. It's all summed up in his motto. He made his fortune by being tougher than the toughies, smarter than the smarties, and what's more, he made it square. In other words, Scrooge doesn't cheat or steal to make his money, but Flintheart does. This thin line of honesty, integrity, compassion, and honor is all it takes to take the same archetype of a character in two wildly different directions. And that difference is roughly the same between every version of Flintheart Glomgold that exists. The original version of Flintheart Glomgold, for instance, first seen in the old Carl Barks comic series, is basically the same character we know from the 1987 DuckTales cartoon. Both versions are a direct reflection of Scrooge McDuck. They're every bit as rich, old, and greedy as Scrooge, but lack the temperament of compassion to keep them in check. For the most part, they're the same character except for one major difference. In the 1987 DuckTales cartoon, Flintheart Glomgold is Scottish. In the original comics, he's not. He's from South Africa. There are actually a lot of small details that do differentiate these characters a little bit. For instance, Comic Glomgold has his own money bin, just like Scrooge's. DuckTales 87's Glomgold, on the other hand, pretty much lives in Duckburg most of the time. But despite these small differences, underneath, they're basically the same character. They behave the same, they act the same, and they have the same motivations. They have just slightly different character backgrounds. The Flintheart Glomgold of the new DuckTales TV series, on the other hand, is a little bit different. He still takes on the role of the second richest duck in the world, and still serves as Uncle Scrooge's rival in all things business, adventure, and health. But he's no longer a direct mirror to Scrooge's personality. Instead, he's everything the original Glomgolds are, but on overdrive. Over the top, obsessed, maniacal, and possibly insane. In some ways, he's still the same Flintheart Glomgold we know and love, but he's also completely different. This new version of Flintheart Glomgold has a hyperactive mind, and he's always coming up with completely ridiculous, harebrained schemes. He also seems way more focused on revenge and harming Scrooge than the other versions of Flintheart Glomgold. Yes, he still wants to best Scrooge McDuck and be his rival, but it seems to be this version of Glomgold's only driving force. Instead of just wanting to be the richest duck in the world for its own sake, he seems obsessed with being it because he needs to be better than Scrooge. That's different. That said, I still can't decide if I think he's really a different character, or if he's changed simply because of the nature of the show. By design, the new DuckTales reboot is just a sillier version of all of these characters than we would normally have. Yeah, they're basically all the same people we know and love, but they're way more gag-focused than adventure-focused. That means characters like Glomgold get to be a little bit more over the top and silly and designed to tell more jokes. But even with that in mind, this shorter, fatter, and more obsessive villain is still completely recognizable as Flintheart Glomgold.
Wait, how did you know it was me?
It's always you.
And it always will be!
For the show's entire first season, we were just presented with this version of Glomgold as is, and he rapidly became a favorite for a ton of viewers. But we never really learned about why he's so competitive and over the top. In the Season 2 episode, The Ballad of Duke Baloney, we finally do. But before we can learn about who Flintheart Glomgold really is, we need to forget about him completely. Or at least he has to.
Don't you know who I am?
Now, who are you?
I don't know.
After losing his grip on his shadow and falling into the sea at the end of the DuckTales Season 1 finale, Flintheart Glomgold has lost his memory. And while amnesia might be a kind of standard go-to trope for a lot of children's cartoons, it can also be a really useful tool for exploring characters, for giving them a chance to discover who they might be if their circumstances were just a little bit different. And Flintheart Glomgold is really different. When Webby and Louie find him working at a bait shop, he's almost unrecognizable. He's standing up straight, he has a big, natural, dark beard, and he's speaking with a different accent, a South African accent. And stranger than anything else, he seems to be a genuinely nice guy.
Hey, Baloney Sandwich, you know who you gotta meet? Our uncle! Scrooge McDuck, don't hit me!
He sounds nice.
After forgetting about himself, Glomgold takes on the name of Duke Baloney. He's generous and kind, he has friends, and he believes in honesty and hard work.
Nothing like an honest day's work for an honest day's pay.
If you haven't seen this episode yet, watch out. There are spoilers ahead. But basically, Flintheart Glomgold is a completely different person. Webby and Louie spend most of this episode trying to figure out if it's a scheme or if Glomgold really has amnesia. And although they do find a few hints of Glomgold's maniacal mannerisms lurking beneath the surface, his change in personality seems to be as genuine as Duke himself. In fact, the persona of Duke Baloney is so well-rounded and believable and genuine that it makes what happens next all the more heartbreaking. As Webby and Louie question who Duke Baloney is, he starts to question himself. He has nightmares about who he used to be, and the darker aspects of his old personality just keep nagging at him. The sequence exploring this is actually one of the coolest things that I've seen in DuckTales so far. It's a completely surreal dive into the psyche of a man broken and split between two different personalities. And it really sells this idea of trying to remember who he is. And when it comes to the end of it, he has a revelation. Duke Baloney realizes that maybe he was this other person, but he decides that he's happy with who he is now. Unfortunately, right as he decides he's okay with being Duke Baloney and wants to accept that that's who he is, he gets hit on the head one more time and discovers who he used to be. Not Flintheart Glomgold, but the original Duke Baloney. Glomgold flashes all the way back to the days of his youth in South Africa, where he was an enthusiastic, happy person with huge ambitions. And just like a young Scrooge McDuck, he's getting his start through hard work. He's even a shoe shine. And so when a young Scrooge stops in to get his spats cleaned, he sees himself in this young Duke Baloney. He even tries to give him the same inspiration to chase his dream, paying the boy with a single American dime, just like the one that motivates Uncle Scrooge to be a self-made man. It doesn't go well.
You're the richest duck in the world, and you only gave me a dime?
This single misunderstanding fuels everything that this version of Flintheart Glomgold will become. He started out as a thematic echo of Scrooge because they shared a similar ambition, but he winds up vindictive, jealous, and focused completely on revenge. Using Scrooge's own fortune, which he pickpockets, to build a Scottish persona and pursue a life focused on besting Scrooge McDuck. All to get back at Scrooge for this one perceived transgression, his entire life dedicating to proving he's better. It's a sad and pathetic way to lead a life, but it's even sadder because in this episode, fate gave Flintheart Glomgold an out. Amnesia showed him a better way, a simpler, happier life that he could take genuine personal pride in. But when he regained his memories and he was faced with the choice of leaving his resentful past behind and embracing the upbeat character of the optimistic, happy young man he once was, he throws that happy life away. And that gives us the complete, full picture of the rebooted Flintheart Glomgold. Unlike the 1987 version, he's not just a Scottish variant of the comic book original. And he's not the comic book original version from South Africa either. Instead, he's kind of a genius combination of them both. Disney's new DuckTales series starts with the idea of the original Flintheart Glomgold, bitter, South African, and truly hateful of Scrooge McDuck, and allows a version of that character to adopt the 1987 cartoon's Scottish identity as a fake persona. This is a brilliant way to merge two fantastic versions of the same character, and the show takes it a step further by laying this combined homage to Flintheart Glomgold over a wholly new version of that character. By giving Glomgold a backstory as Duke Baloney, it lends the character a new layer of complexity. He now has a more personal motivation to best Scrooge McDuck. It's not just about being the richest duck in the world anymore, it's about proving that he's better. Even so, he's very much a different Flintheart Glomgold. He still has the same motivations, but he's also far less stable. He's obsessive and scheming in a way that the other versions of this character just weren't. But as I said before, I think that's just because this version of DuckTales is just a little bit more silly. It needs a weirder, more over-the-top Flintheart Glomgold to stay in pace with all of its quick gags. I think this version of Flintheart Glomgold is sillier and stranger just because that better fits with this world. Despite how different that is, though, the core of the original character is still here. The hatred, the thematic mirroring, the drive to best Scrooge at every turn, and most important, the almost friendly rivalry. And to be honest, I think that last part is why this version of Flintheart Glomgold truly works. Not because he's Scrooge's worst enemy, but because he's kind of Scrooge's oldest friend. In spite of their endless competition with each other, Scrooge and Glomgold have this enduring agnostic friendship. It's true that they aren't really friends in any reasonable sense of the word, but they share a lifelong relationship that runs deep. Affection isn't the driving force between that relationship, but they probably know each other better than any other person who's not in their own families. In the comics and the old cartoons, we see this in how they both seem to revel in the joy of competing with each other. There's no greater sport than a billionaire's challenge. And in the new show, that strange rapport can be seen in their shared space in the Billionaires Club. They may not like each other, but they still choose to spend time with each other, and they enjoy the camaraderie of their competition. That's probably why, in spite of everything they've gone through together, Scrooge seems genuinely happy to find that Glomgold has found peace in becoming Duke Baloney. Unfortunately, all good things must end. Without a doubt, Flintheart Glomgold is one of the most changed characters in the entire DuckTales reboot. But despite these changes, he doesn't feel out of place or a betrayal to who he's meant to be. Considering how different he is as a character, that's a phenomenal success. And it's a good example of how DuckTales continuously retains the spirit of its characters while still giving them new life. And if you're true to your characters, they'll feel true to you. Even if they're a crazy, maniacal, obsessed maniac bent on lifelong revenge. Because, deep down, some people never really change.
Because I'm Flintheart Glomgold, and I always will be!
Yes, you will, sir. Yes, you will.